Paris, November 1919. The armistice has hung its white flag for a year, yet the city exhales smoke from wounds that refuse to close. Factories cough black into the autumn chill, repurposing the machinery of death for the banalities of peace. Plows from howitzers, candelabras from bayonets. In a cramped workshop at 76 Rue de la Roquette, tucked behind the Père Lachaise cemetery, where the ghosts of revolutionaries and poets mingle with the unquiet dead of the Marne, Edgar Brandt hammers away at redemption. He is 40, broad-shouldered but lean, like a sculpture half-chiseled from the block. His hands, calloused from wielding both chisel and torch, move with the precision of a surgeon dissecting memory. Brandt was no soldier. His war was fought in the forge, crafting the ornate gates of the Champs-Élysées and the sinuous railings that once whispered Art Nouveau's embrace. But the Great War found him anyway. In 1914, as the Kaiser's shadow swallowed France, Brandt's workshop became a shadow factory. He forged the iron spines of tanks, the filigreed triggers of rifles, beauty twisted into brutality. "Design is truth," he would murmur to his apprentices, wiping sweat from his brow. And truth, in times like these, cuts deepest. The war haunts him not in nightmares of mud and mustard gas, but in the quiet betrayal of form. He sees it in the twisted rebar of bombed-out boulevards, in the orphaned children peddling shrapnel as souvenirs. Art Deco, they call the new style now, geometric, unyielding, a geometry of grief. Brandt embraces it, but with a sculptor's doubt. Can lines so clean contain the chaos? His latest commission, a console table for a widowed baroness, gleams under the gaslight. Chrome curves like frozen waves, inlaid with ebony that absorbs the light like a black hole. But as he polishes the edges, his mind drifts to the letters from the front. Cousins vaporized in the blink of a 75mm shell, friends buried under the weight of their own artillery. It begins as an accident, this pivot from ornament to offense. Late one evening, as rain tattoos the workshop's tin roof, Brandt experiments with a pneumatic press for shaping radiator grills. The device spits a small steel cylinder, barely 60mm across, propelling it with a hiss that echoes the sigh of a dying engine. He pauses, hammer mid-swing. What if? The thought lodges like a shard of shrapnel. What if force need not roar from the maw of a cannon, but whisper from the hand of a single man? What if the weapon that felled empires could be carried like a sketchpad, fired from the shoulder like a prayer? By dawn, the idea has metastasized into prototype. Brandt scavenges from his scrap bins. Seamless steel tubing from a chandelier armature, a base forged from the foot of a forgotten gate. No rifling, no breach, simplicity incarnate. Drop a finned shell down the tube. It strikes a fixed pin, ignites the propellant, and arcs skyward on a plume of controlled fury. Light as a painter's easel, under 10 kilograms, yet potent enough to lob high-explosive death 1,500 meters with the grace of a thrown vase. He names it privately, Le Mortier Léger, the light mortar. But in his sketches, it's just Tube 60, humble, unpretentious, a counterpoint to the lumbering howitzers that scarred Verdun. Word spreads in the ateliers as it does among artists nursing absinthe-fueled grudges. Brandt invites a coterie of old colleagues, painters turned propagandists, jewelers conscripted to stamp dog tags, to witness the first test. They gather in a derelict quarry on the city's outskirts, the air sharp with cordite and crushed limestone. Brandt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, positions the tube on its bipod, the steel catching the weak sun like a scalpel's edge. A volunteer, his lanky apprentice, Jacques, loads the shell, a hollow iron egg, grooved for spin, filled with enough TNT to crater a crater. "Stand clear," Brandt says, his voice steady as a metronome. No fanfare, no countdown. The shell drops. Thunk. A muffled cough, then a rising whistle, elegant, almost melodic. The projectile crests the tree line, vanishes into blue. Seconds later, a dull whump, and earth erupts in a geyser of dust 200 meters distant. The artists applaud, half drunk on the poetry of it, but Brandt sees only the math. Elevation precise to the degree, range tunable by charge. Beauty in function, he thinks. Function in beauty. The military's response is a study in disdain. Brandt, ever the optimist, presents his Tube 60 to the commissioned artillery at the École Polytechnique. The room reeks of pipe tobacco and polished leather. Generals in crisp blue tunics, their chests a forest of ribbons earned in the static slaughter of the Somme. Colonel Henri Duval, a mustachioed veteran with a glass eye from Ypres, squints at the prototype as if it were a child's slingshot. "Monsieur Brandt," he drawls, hefting the tube like a baguette, "this is no weapon. It's a firework tube for your garden parties. Where is the caliber? The recoil mechanism? It weighs less than my saber." Laughter ripples through the ranks, a chorus of baritones mocking the interloper. An engineer, young and ambitious, pipes up, "Artillery is about dominance, not delicacy. Your toy couldn't dent a dugout, let alone a division." Brandt stands unmoved, his face a mask of Deco restraint, angles sharp, expression unyielding. He has heard such barbs before, in salons where critics dismissed his iron roses as industrial vulgarity. They see size as strength, he reflects, but strength is in the unseen leverage, the fulcrum that topples giants. He demonstrates, another shell, another arc. This time he marks the impact with a puff of flour-dusted chalk. The white bloom hangs in the air, a ghost of precision. The laughter falters, but not enough. The commission adjourns with polite nothings. Charming but impractical. "Return to your railings, artist." Undeterred, Brandt refines. Nights blur into weeks. The workshop becomes a hermitage of sparks and solitude. He iterates the shell's obturation grooves, ensuring gas-tight seals for velocity without waste. The bipod evolves from crude forks to adjustable struts, inspired by the adjustable arms of his Deco lampshades. Jock, loyal shadow, feeds the forge while Brandt pores over ballistics tables borrowed from a sympathetic professor. "Simplicity is genius," he scrawls in his journal, the ink smudged by forge-blackened fingers. "The generals worship spectacle. I offer survival." Fate, that capricious curator, intervenes in the form of an unlikely patron. Captain Elias Thorne, an American military attaché stationed in Paris to sift Europe's war scrap for Yankee ingenuity, wanders into Brandt's atelier unannounced. Thorne is a wiry New Englander, all angles and ink-stained cuffs, more poet than warrior. Dispatched by the fledgling U.S. Ordnance Department to hunt innovations amid the rubble. He has seen the elephant, a doughboy who survived Belleau Wood by the grace of a jammed German machine gun. Now he seeks not glory, but gadgets that level the field. Thorne pauses at the workbench drawn by the Tube 60's gleam, a slender obelisk amid the chaos of half-formed sculptures. "What's this, then? A fountain pen for giants?" His tone is light, but his eyes sharpen as Brandt explains, the drop-fire mechanism, the portable punch. Thorne, no stranger to the Stokes mortar's clunky British progenitor, recognizes kin. He hefting it, sights down the bore like a rifleman. Light as sin, deadly as virtue. "Show me." They trek to the quarry again, Thorne in tow. The shell sings its trajectory. The earth answers with a tremor. Thorne's face splits in a grin, predatory, appreciative. Gentlemen in Washington will call it folly, but folly wins wars when doctrine digs its heels. Over cognac that night, in a bistro where the walls weep with faded murals, Thorne probes. Patents, production, price. Brandt, wary of merchants in uniform, hesitates. This is no sale, it's a surrender of soul. But Thorne speaks of doughboys in future fields, of infantry orphaned by artillery's reach. "Your toy could be their godsend, monsieur. Small, yes, but empires fall to the overlooked." By month's end, the ink dries on the deal. Thorne secures the U.S. rights for a pittance. Enough for Brandt to fund his next Deco commission, a peace gate for the Arc de Triomphe. The Frenchman watches the American depart, the blueprint tucked under his arm like contraband. No fanfare, no parade, just the quiet click of a latch, sealing invention to destiny. Paris slumbers under a powder moon, oblivious. The war's echoes fade into cabaret songs and clinking glasses. Brandt returns to his console table, the iron cool under his palms. He etches a subtle flourish into the leg, a faint arc evoking a shell's parabola. Let them laugh, he thinks. The hammers ring a lullaby. Laughter is the sound of the blind. In the years to come, as flappers danced the Charleston and speakeasies defied prohibition, Brandt's Tube 60 would gather dust in patent vaults, dismissed as a European eccentricity. He would sculpt again, radiator caps like armored knights, door handles that whispered of streamlined speed. Art Deco would crown him its Iron King, his works adorning the liners that plied the Atlantic, bridges that spanned the Seine's renewed sparkle. But across the ocean, in the humid armories of Springfield and Watervliet, Captain Thorne's whisper would take root. Sketches copied, alloys tested, the toy reborn as doctrine, not with trumpets, but with the inexorable grind of gears. He built something too small to matter, and too perfect to fail. Springfield Armory, Massachusetts, March 1921. The air hangs heavy with linseed oil and machine oil, a perfume of precision amid the clang of test fires echoing down vaulted halls. Captain Thorne, now Major, his uniform rumpled from the transatlantic crossing, unrolls Brandt's sketches before a panel of skeptics. The room is a reliquary of rejected dreams, prototype submachine guns gathering dust, recoilless rifles bent from overambition. Ordnance officers, bearded patriarchs of ballistics, their eyes hardened by the ain, lean forward, pipes clenched like bayonets. Thorne, undaunted, launches into his pitch with the fervor of a revivalist. Gentlemen, forget the behemoths of the Western Front. The next war won't be won by siege guns on rails. It'll be infantry dancing in the dark, outgunned and outnumbered. This, he taps the tube's outline, is mobility forged in French fire. 60 millimeters of heresy, light enough for a rifleman to hump over hills, accurate enough to kiss a bunker goodnight. The lead evaluator, Colonel Amos Peabody, a Civil War descendant who equates firepower with foot-pounds, snorts into his mustache. A French artist's doodle? Major, we've got the Stokes from the Brits. Clunky, yes, but it thumps. Your toy looks like it belongs in a Parisian toy shop, not Belleauwood Redux. Murmurs of agreement ripple, laced with the arrogance of isolation. America, flush with victory's afterglow, dismisses Europe's eccentricities as war-wearied whims. They see a bauble, Thorne thinks. Jaw tightening, I see salvation. But Thorne is no mere courier. He's a tactician scarred by the mud, where doughboys died waiting for distant batteries to zero in. He insists on demonstration. The armory's proving ground, a scarred meadow ringed by sandbag butts, becomes their coliseum. Thorne has cobbled a mock-up from local steel. Not Brandt's exquisite seamless tubing, but welded pipe from a plumbing supplier, bipod lashed from tractor forks. Crude, but kin. A squad of ordnance techs, young and eager, load the facsimile shells, brass casings stuffed with black powder, fused for airburst. The first shot is a prayer. Plunk. The tube recoils with a polite shudder, the shell lofting lazy as a drunkard's toss. It detonates short, a feeble puff that draws chuckles. Peabody's brow arches. See? Fizzle. Thorne waves it off, wind shear charge inconsistency. Adjustments, elevation cranked, increment bags trimmed. The second arc's true, a silver comet cresting the elms, to bloom in a thunderclap that rattles the observer's teeth. Shrapnel peppers the target, a mock machine gun nest of logs and crates, splintering it like matchwood. Silence falls, broken only by the patter of debris. One by one, doubts fracture. Lieutenant Harlan Graves, a wiry MIT grad with ink-stained fingers, kneels by the tube, tracing its bore. No breech to foul, no recoil to tame. It's elegant, like a slide rule for shells. Peabody, grudging, hefts it himself. 8 kilograms of potential balanced on a man's frame. Portable punch, but can we scale it? Standardize? The infantry needs regiments, not one-offs. That's the spark. Over the next fortnight, Springfield's forges hum with adaptation. Brandt's purity is preserved, the drop-fire heart, the fin-stabilized rounds, but Americanized, inch measurements supplant metrics, alloys swapped for Uncle Sam's surplus. The bipod gains locking pins from Thompson submachine parts. Sights borrow from the M1917 Enfield. By May, the M1 prototype emerges. Matte olive drab, etched with eagle stamps, a bastard child of art and arsenal. Tests proliferate. Night shoots under Klieg lights, where the tube's low signature, mere muzzle flash, no betraying roar, earns nods from the night fighters. Endurance runs, a squad humps it cross-country, lobbing 50 rounds without fatigue, while a 75mm pack howitzer bogs in the brambles. Word ascends the chain, a whisper up the Potomac. General John J. Pershing, the doughboy czar himself, reviews the reports in his Arlington office, overlooking the Potomac's languid flow. Fresh from command, he pores over the metrics. Rate of fire triple the Stokes, setup time halved, vulnerability near nil. The future ain't in the big guns, he mutters to his aide, a echo of his Moose Argonne grit. It's in what the private can carry, and the devil he can drop from the sky. Approval cascades, patents licensed, production greenlit. Not with parades, but procurement orders slipped into the fiscal shadows. Detroit's auto barons, idled by post-war slump, pivot to munitions. Fisher Body stamps the tubes from streamlined dies meant for fenders. Remington crafts the shells, their incremental charges like layered chocolates of destruction. By 1924, the M2 60mm mortar is born. Standardized, simplified, scaled. Manuals multiply. Crisp diagrams of elevation tables, firing tables etched on acetate overlays. It's no panacea. Flaws linger. A base plate prone to sinking in mud, rounds finicky in humidity. But it's doctrine distilled. Infantry's own artillery, democratizing death. The interwar years unfold like a slow waltz toward abyss. Maneuvers at Fort Benning see the M2 in scripted skirmishes, lobbing smoke and illusion over mock ridges. Cadets, fresh from West Point's geometry drills, marvel at its arc, like throwing a curveball to God. One quips as shells whisper overhead, yet arrogance lingers. Budget hawks in Congress slash ordnance lines, deeming the pop gun expendable. Overseas observers, British lords in +4s, German envoys with clipped accents, sneer in embassy salons, Yankee gimmickry. Real war demands real iron. Thorne, promoted to lieutenant colonel, watches from the wings, his office a sanctum of blueprints and bourbon. Letters from Brandt arrive sporadically, postmarked Paris, queries on royalties, meager, musings on Deco's rise. The world adores my gates more than my guardians, the Frenchman writes, a wry flourish. Thorne replies with photos, drills at Leavenworth, tubes muzzle up in formation, like proud parent to distant kin. He crafts beauty. We wield it blunt, Thorne reflects, toasting the ether. But beauty bites back. Across the Pacific, shadows lengthen. In Tokyo's war ministries, blueprints pilfered via neutral ships spark curiosity. Japanese engineers tinker with copies, the Type 97, a squat homage, but miss the soul, Brandt's insistence on seamlessness, the whisper over the bellow. They scale up, chasing spectacle, blind to the scalpel's edge. Meanwhile, in America's heartland, the M2 embeds. National Guard weekends at Camp Perry. Farmers and clerks man the tubes, their hands learning the ritual. Clean bore with oily rag, align sights by thumb's breadth, drop and pray. It's taught not as terror, but tool. The equalizer for the outnumbered, the voice for the voiceless squad. By 1939, as Europe ignites anew, warehouses bulge with 10,000 units, oiled and waiting. Dust motes dance in arsenal sunbeams, tubes racked like organ pipes of impending requiem. Pearl Harbor shatters the idyll, December 7, 1941. Alarms wail from Hawaii to the Alleghenies, the M2 leaps from mothballs to manifests. Factories roar, Studebaker Ford, churning tubes by the regiment. Training films flicker in humid Quonset huts, the mortar is your brother in arms, light, lethal, loyal. Recruits, boys from Brooklyn and Boise etch the lore. Charge the round, angle the tube, track the fall. No glory in the grunt, but grim poetry in the plume. As convoys steam west, the weapon that crossed an ocean in a valise now fills holds hip deep. Marines at New River Depot, North Carolina, drill under Carolina pines, the thunk-plunk boom a backwoods symphony. Louis Chesty Puller, the iron-willed colonel with a chest like a boilerplate, eyes the M2 during inspections. Fancy French frippery? He growls to his exec, but his grip lingers, calculating. Puller trusts math over metals, trajectories as true as marine oaths. If it slays from the shadows, it's scripture. The world spins toward inferno, alliances fracturing like fault lines. Brandt, in Paris under occupation's boot, hears fragments via BBC whispers, American cousins wielding his whisper. He sculpts in secret, a hidden vice crafting resistance rivets, his journal noting, the tube lives. May it guard better than it guards. No royalties flow, war devours such niceties. But in his atelier amid blackout curtains he sketches anew, a victory arch, mortars stylized as laurels. Washington hums with haste, the arsenal of democracy grinding gears. The M2, once footnote, swells to footnote's army, 60,000 by 42, bound for atolls and ridges unnamed. No headlines hail its quiet coup. It's logistics, not legend. Yet in staff cars rumbling to the hill, Pershing's successors murmur its metrics, folding it into island-hopping calculus. The Atlantic, that indifferent mediator, laps at shores east and west. Thorne, desk-bound in the Pentagon's bowels, unrolls a Pacific chart, pins marking supply routes. A cable from Noumea, mortars en route to the Solomons. He smiles, faint as fog, from Paris parlor to jungle pyre. Small world, after all. The world didn't notice when they bought it, but history would. The island breathes malice. Guadalcanal, that emerald dagger thrust into the coral sea, has claimed its toll in weeks. Dysentery twisting guts like wet rope, malaria blooming fever dreams in the foxholes. For the 1st Marine Division, it's no conquest. It's endurance etched in sweat and salt. Henderson Field, their fragile prize wrested from Japanese engineers in August bloodbath, squats at the island's waist like a boxer too tired to raise his gloves. Runways of crushed coral scar the plain, fighters wheezing off into monsoons, while in the encircling hills, the jungle waits, patient as a predator. October 24th dawns sodden, the rain a relentless tattoo on ponchos that sag like defeated sails. In the sector known as Bloody Knoll, a muddy spine rising from the Tenaru River's floodplain, 700 men of the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, hunker in their perimeter. Starvation is their sergeant major. Rations halved to scraps of bully beef and rice pilfered from enemy dead, bellies bloated from quinine tabs more than food. Faces hollowed to bone, eyes sunk like spent cartridges, they move in a rhythm of resignation, patrols probing the green curtain, sentries trading cigarettes for sips of brackish water. Louis Burwell Chesty Puller commands from a command post that's little more than a tarpaulin over a shell crater. At 45, he's a Marine's Marine. 5'10" of gristle and growl, chest puffed with campaign ribbons from Haiti to Nicaragua, where he learned that will is the truest caliber. His voice, a gravel rasp honed by cigars and command, cuts through the downpour as he briefs his officers around a lantern-lit map, the paper curling in the damp. Intel says Kawaguchi's ghosts are stirring again. Sendai Division, fresh from Rabaul. 3,000, give or take, with Type 97s and knees bent for banzai. We hold this ridge or we swim home in pieces. His exec, Major Kenneth Bailey, nods, tracing the ridgeline with a nicotine-stained finger. Bailey's a Princeton man, soft around the edges from desk duty, but Puller's gaze hardens him like case-hardened steel. Sir, we've got 9 tubes up there. 60 millimeters from the weapons platoon. Ammo's tight, 200 rounds per, half HE, half Ilum if it goes black. Puller grunts approval, his mind already mapping arcs. He trusts the math, it's the one constant in war's fog. Tubes don't lie, he thinks, recalling Nicaragua's trails, where a well-placed round turned ambush to rout. Men do, but not tonight. The mortars, those slender sentinels, are emplaced along the reverse slope. 9 M2s in a ragged line, tubes elevated like inquisitive periscopes, base plates spiked into the loam. Each crew, 4 men to a gun, works in shadowed ritual, oblivious to the French lineage in their steel. Corporal Elias Eli Ramirez, a Brooklyn Italo Yank with hands like a watchmaker, swabs his tube's bore with an oiled rag, the ritual as intimate as a lover's caress. The metal, cool despite the jungle's furnace, whispers under his touch, seamless, unyielding, a relic from a Paris forge he'll never see. She's purring tonight, boys, he mutters to his loader, Private Jimmy Hale, a Kansas farm kid whose freckles fade under grime. Keep her clean and she'll sing you to sleep. Hale nods, stacking shells in a pyramid of brass and iron, fins glinting like deco facets, charges banded in silk pouches for fine-tuning fury. The rounds are featherweights compared to the 81 millimeters down the line, 2 pounds apiece, lobbed at 20 rounds a minute when the devil demands it. But in this green tomb, where visibility dies at 10 yards, it's the intimacy that saves. No need for spotters on hill crests, just a forward observer's whisper on the field phone, and the tube answers with geometry's grace. Drop and forget, Hale thinks, hefting around, like skipping stones on the Arkansas, only these skip on skulls. Word filters through the lines like smoke. The Japanese are massing. Scouts from the 164th Infantry, Army boys relieving the tip of the spear, report shadows in the coconut groves, the clink of Arasaka rifles muffled by chants. Major General Kiyotake Kawaguchi's offensive, shattered in September's Edson's Ridge slaughter, has reformed under Tomataro Hori's shadow. The 2nd Sendai Division, 3,000 strong, veterans of Shanghai's streets, their bushido forged in bayonet drills. Intelligence, pieced from POW mutterings and Aussie coast watchers, paints them funneling down the Marita Trail, a serpentine scar through the mountains, now slick with mud. In the enemy lines, 5 miles north, Captain Katsumata paces his company's lager, a clearing choked with bamboo revetments. Katsumata is 32, slight as a katana, his uniform crisp despite the humidity that curls maps like dead leaves. A Tokyo Imperial graduate, he carries the weight of Bushido not as bluster, but quiet calculus, honor in the strike, precision in the pierce. His men, rice farmers from Kyushu, clerks from Osaka, sharpen bayonets under firefly lanterns, the whetstone's shik-shik, a lullaby of intent. The Americans cling to their airfield like barnacles, he tells his platoon leaders, voice low as monsoon wind. We are the tide. Silent, inexorable, no artillery to announce us, only steel and spirit at dawn. Katsumata's faith is in the wave. Banzai charges that break lines like surf on reefs, doctrine born from Iwo's illusions. But doubt flickers, unbidden, a POW's ravings of popping tubes that rain unseen death. He dismisses it as Yankee propaganda, yet fingers the Type 97 grenade on his belt, its pineapple heft a talisman. Geometry, he muses, staring into the jungle's maw. War is will, not wizardry. Nearby, Lieutenant Colonel Shoji Jiro, aide to the divisional commander, relays orders from General Nasu Masao. Advance at midnight, envelop the ridge, seize the field by first light. Nasu, ensconced in a cave HQ, pores over sketches by lantern, flawed maps that compress the island to contours, blind to the Marines' entrenchments. Their perimeter is brittle, Nasu intones to his staff, sake cup steaming in the chill. One push and it shatters. For the Emperor. His voice carries the chill of Sendai winters, but beneath it, the tremor of haste. Tokyo demands victory, or heads. Back on Bloody Knoll, the afternoon drags into amber torpor. John Basilone, the gunnery sergeant from Little Italy, prowls the wire with his 30 cal crew, his stocky frame a bull in the mist. At 26, he's already a legend in whispers. Guadalcanal's first days saw him drag a wrecked gun from no man's land, bayonet flashing like a pizzeria's cleaver. Now he checks his water-cooled Brownings, barrels oiled against the rust that creeps like fever. Eyes sharp, jarheads, he barks to his loader, a kid from Jersey named Angelo. Nips don't announce tea time, they come with grins and steel. Basilone's gut churns, not fear but the animal knowing, something stirs in the vines. He pauses at a mortar pit, clapping Ramirez on the shoulder. Your pop gun's ready to dance, Eli? Ramirez grins, feral under stubble. Loaded for bear, gunny? Or monkey if that's their style. Basilone chuckles, but his eyes linger on the tubes. Slender, unassuming, like the switchblades of his Hoboken youth. Small blades cut deepest. He thinks, moving on. Puller from his crater throne watches it all. The banter as armor, the shared smokes as sacrament. He pens a dispatch by flashlight. Holding firm, morale iron, mortars key to counter battery. Unaware the irony. Those mortars, his key, traced to a sculptor's whim, a Paris patent yellowed by time. Dusk bleeds into night, the rain a silver veil that muffles the world. Sentries peer into the murk, garons clutched like rosaries. Hale on watch hears it first. A rustle, not wind, branches parting like a sigh. He hisses down the line, the word spreads, electric. Radios crackle to Puller, movement confirmed. Estimate battalion plus probing south. The colonel rises, mud sucking at his boots, voice a whip crack. Stand to. Mortars, stand by for fire mission. Ilum first, light 'em like Christmas. Crews scramble, shadows in the downpour. Tubes elevate to 60 degrees, sights zeroed on pre-registered points. The trail's mouth, a ravine lip. Ramirez dials charges, fingers numb but sure. Come on, you bastards, he wills the dark. See what French finesse feels like. Basilone nests his guns, ammo belts draped like bandoliers, the water jacket sloshing. Katsumata's men, ghosts in the green, creep forward. Bayonets fixed, hearts pounding the taiko of advance. Nasu, in his cave, folds his map with finality. The ridge will fall. The jungle holds its breath. Rain drums on helmets, drips from leaves like tears unshed. A flare pops distant, magnesium ghost illuminating kunai waves. Then, the first scout stumbles into wire, a cry cut short by a burst from Basilone's left gun. Alarms wail, the night ignites. Puller grabs the field phone. Foe to mortar 1, enemy in the open, 500 yards, bearing 280. Fire for effect. Shells kiss the sky, thunk thunk, trailing phosphor tails. But the wave builds, relentless. Shadows resolving to khaki figures, Arasakas glinting. 3,000, funneling like ink in water, their officers' whistles piercing the roar. Katsumata at the van urges silence. Quietly, for honor. Yet the earth betrays them, twigs snap, boots squelch. The Marines answer with lead, tracers stitching the gloom, grenades arcing like condemnations. Puller, chin jutted, scans the chaos through binocs fogged by breath. Hold the line, he commands the ether. The tubes will break them. Ramirez drops the first HE, a cough, a whistle, a bloom of orange that scatters the front rank like chaff. Screams rise, Japanese, raw as exposed nerve. But the horde presses, bayonets a silver tide, midnight tolls in thunder. The assault crests, human geometry clashing with steel. Ilum shells hang like judgment lanterns, casting long shadows of doom. Basilone's guns chatter, muzzles winking fury, but ammo chains dwindle. Katsumata vaults a log, saber drawn, his platoon a spearhead of doom. For the Emperor, the thought fractures as a mortar round walks the line. Whump, whump, earth erupting in geysers of mud and meat. The ridge trembles. Puller smells cordite and copper, blood's tang. Now or never. He bellows to the pits. Concentrate fire. Walk it in. Tubes cough in unison, shells marching like reapers. The irony unfolds unseen. A sculptor's sketch, mocked in marble halls, now redrawing the night in fire and fall. When 3,000 men began to move through the trees, geometry took aim. Midnight fractures like brittle bone. The Japanese assault erupts not with a bang, but a swarm. 3,000 shadows spilling from the tree line, a khaki avalanche driven by drums and desperation. Their officers' whistles slice the downpour, shrill as shikisan bayonets, urging the wave forward in ragged echelons. Captain Katsumata leads the spearhead, his company fanning into the kunai like ink in water, Arisakas leveled low for hip fire. The air thickens with their breath, ragged chants of "Banzai," "Tenno Heika," swallowed by the roar. No tanks, no Type 92 howitzers, just men, mythologized into momentum, their Type 97 mortars left behind in the mud as too cumbersome for the night stalk. From his crater command post, Chesty Puller peers through rain-blurred binocs, the glass fogging with each exhale. The Ilum shells from the first barrage hang like pallid moons, etching the horde in magnesium starkness, faces twisted in fervor, bayonets a forest of silver thorns. They're committed, he growls into the field phone, voice a gravel anchor amid the gale. Foe, adjust fire. 200 yards in, all tubes, full charge. Walk it like you're plowing hell. His staff huddles close, maps plastered to knees. The lanterns flicker, dancing across Puller's crags, eyes like rifle sights, unblinking. In Pit 1, Corporal Eli Ramirez feels the ridge shudder under boot soles, the enemy a palpable pressure building like storm surge. His crew hail on loads, 2 ammo bearers slick with fever sweat, huddles in the shallow scrape, the M2 tube a cold sentinel between them. The phone jangles. Ramirez snatches it, ear pressed to the bakelite. Fire mission confirmed. Charge 4, elevation 1250, on the way. He dials the sight with thumb and forefinger, the click-click a metronome of mortality. Hale palms a shell, its iron skin beaded with rain, fins etched like Brandt's Deco whorls, and drops it smooth. Thunk. The tube belches a modest plume, barely a cough against the night's cacophony. The round vanishes into the black, a silent apostrophe. Across the line, 8 more tubes echo, a chorus of muted thuds, shells arsing in parabolic solidarity. No thunderous broadside, the M2's heresy is its hush, the low-velocity launch a whisper where howitzers would bellow betrayal. Puller's gamble. Concentrate the light mortars, their intimacy turning the ridge into a killing box. The first impacts walk the jungle's hem, whump, 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 erupting in staggered blooms of orange and earth. Shrapnel hisses through the cane, invisible reapers claiming the vanguard. A squad leader crumples, chest opened like a rotten melon. Runners scatter, limbs cartwheeling in the flash. Katsumata, mid-stride, feels the ground buck, a vibration more felt than heard, like the island's pulse quickening to rage. Press on, it's their fear speaking, he shouts, saber aloft, but his voice frays as a shell detonates overhead, air-burst fuse blooming a chandelier of fragments. Men scream, raw, animal, as steel kisses flesh, the rain turning red rivulets in the mud. His platoon, 200 souls bent on glory, fractures, 20 down in the opening salvo, bodies twisted in eternal genuflect. What sorcery? Katsumata thinks, ducking behind a banyan root, the bark splintering under secondary strikes. No visible guns, no tracer storms, just falling fire, precise as karma. John Basilone's guns take the strain as the wave crests the wire. His 2 Brownings, water-jacketed behemoths, hork lead in sustained bursts, burp, burp, muzzles climbing under recoil, stitching the press like a seamstress gone mad. Ammo bearers scurry in the dark, belts slapping wet against thighs, while Basilone traverses with the cool of a butcher at slab. Left 100, pour it, he bellows, sweat carving canyons in his grime. A Japanese light machine gun, Type 11, barking like a chained dog, answers from the flank, rounds snapping overhead, one clipping Angelo's helmet with a ping that draws blood. Basilone pivots, 45, barking point blank at a climber on the sandbags. Not today, you slant-eyed Sanuva bitch. The man tumbles back, eyes wide in surprise, joining the tangle of khaki and coral. But the mortars are the revelation, the geometry uncoiling like a spring. Puller shifts fire on the fly. Converge on the trail mouth, danger close, Ilum and he, alternate. Ramirez's tube cycles like a metronome, drop, thud, whistle, boom. Hail feeds the beast, shell after shell, charges peeled like onion skins for range tweaks, his arms burning but rhythm unbroken. The Ilum rounds pop high, bathing the ravine in sodium glare. The Japanese column revealed, a serpent of men coiling up the slope, officers flogging stragglers with scabbards. Then he follows, walking the length, crump, 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 each impact a crater of chaos, flinging bodies like rag dolls, the air acrid with propellant and porcelain screams. In the heart of the horde, General Nasu's reserve battalion, fresh reserves from the 29th Infantry, funnels into the kill zone, their advance a doctrinal dream, fixed bayonets, no fire orders until the wire. Lieutenant Colonel Shoji Jiro, Nasu's hatchet man, urges them with radioed fervor. The enemy breaks, 50 meters to glory, but glory gutters in the glare. A mortar round air bursts dead center, shrapnel sleeting horizontal, scything ranks like wheat. Jiro sees it unfold. A private beside him headless in a blink, another's legs sheared at the knee, stump pumping arterial arcs. Fall back, regroup. His order chokes as fragments whisper through, carving his throat. The column dissolves, panics geometry, men piling in heaps, trampling the fallen in blind flight. Puller smells the turn, the copper bite of blood mingling with cordite, the falter and the whistles. They're bunching, mortars, maximum rate, smoke the flanks. The pits become fevered altars, tubes glowing cherry from friction, crews slick with powder burns, voices hoarse over the din. Ramirez's sight blurs, rain or tears, but hands steady, dropping rounds like judgments. One shell, fin-stabilized whisper from Paris, arcs true to Katsumata's clump. It falls amid his remnant platoon, fuse ticking to zero. Whump. The blast hurls him backward, saber flying, ribs caging fire where lungs once drew breath. He rises once, defiant, for honor, before collapsing, the jungle reclaiming him in mud and vines. His code, that unyielding lattice of duty, shatters against unseen lines. Brandt's clean bore, the obturator's seal, the parabola's inexorable pull. The arrogance of scale unravels thread by thread. Nasu, in his dripping cave HQ 2 miles rear, clutches the radio as reports cascade. Static-laced litanies of loss. Tubes in the night, falling like God's wrath. Casualties mounting. His maps, those paper illusions of control, curl in the lantern's heat, contours mocking his miscalculation. Impossible, he mutters, sake spilling from trembling cup. No artillery support, yet this? Sendai's doctrine, massed infantry as unbreakable tide, crumbles under the M2's retort. Portable, precise, a democrat's disdain for spectacle. 3,000 entered the trees as conquerors, now hundreds litter the slope, the ridge a charnel of whimpers and wheezes. Basilone's guns run dry first, belts exhausted, barrels wilting under sustained fire. He vaults the emplacement, 45 and grenades in hand, joining the melee at wire's edge. A knot of Japanese breaches the line, 6, bayonets thirsty, clashing with clubbed rifles and entrenching tools. Basilone wades in, pistol cracking skulls, a grenade's pineapple bloom scattering the rest. Push him back, for Christ's sake hold. Blood slicks his fatigues, not all his, but the fury sustains him. Tireless as the tubes that feed his flank. Dawn's false promise graze the east, but the assault ebbs, spent. Puller tallies by runner, enemy dead carpet the wire, 200 counted, hundreds more dragged into green. His own losses, 50, mostly in the breach, sting like salt in wounds, but the ridge endures. Ceasefire mortars, conserve for the mop-up. Ramirez slumps against his tube, the steel still warm, a lover's fever. Hail tallies duds, 3 fin faults in the wet. But the rest sang true, over 300 rounds expended, the geometry flawless. French bastard knew his lines, Ramirez thinks, lighting a soggy lucky. Art, my ass. That's poetry in steel. Nasu orders withdraw, the remnants slinking north under cover of false flares, his pride a casualty heavier than men. In Tokyo's war rooms, cables will spin defeat as strategic repositioning, but here, in the ridge's ravaged lap, truth settles like ash. The M2, that toy dismissed in Paris salons and Springfield skeptics snorts, has redrawn the night. Simplicity is scalpel, severing arrogance at the artery. The rain eases to drizzle, washing the dead toward the sea. Puller lights a cigar, the cherry a lone defiant glow. We held, but at what invisible debt? Basilone drags a wounded Marine to aid, the kid's gasps a litany of luck. The tubes cool, silent now, their bores staring skyward like blind oracles. They laughed at his toy, then it laughed last. The ridge falls quiet, as if the island itself mourns the geometry's toll. Dawn creeps over the Matanikau's distant haze, painting the carnage in soft, unforgiving light. Japanese dead piled in windrows along the wire, their bayonets bent like broken promises, Arasakas clutched in rigor's grip. 700 Marines emerge from their holes, ghosts in olive drab, stepping cautious over the human detritus. The count begins at first blush, a grim census by squad leaders, tallied on soggy pads. Enemy losses near 500 confirmed, twice that dragged into the green by withdrawing shadows. Marine casualties, 80 souls. Their foxholes empty altars, dog tags harvested like grim relics. Chesty Puller stands atop his crater, mud-caked boots planted wide, surveying the field through binocs that now reveal only stillness. His cigar, drowned in the night's fury, lies crushed under heel. He lights another, the match's flare etching his face in hollows, triumph tempered by the tax of command. "We bought the dawn," he rasps to Major Bailey, who kneels nearby, bandaging a gash on his own forearm. "But at what invoice?" Bailey nods, gaze lingering on a fallen ensign, the boy's helmet askew like a crown toppled. Puller turns to the mortar line, those 9 tubes now silent obelisks, their bipods sunk in the sop. "Tell Ordnance those pop guns earned their keep. Simplicity's the devil's own virtue. No medals yet for the M2s, just the unspoken sacrament of survival, etched in the survivor's stairs." In Pit 1, Eli Ramirez stirs, his back a map of bruises from the night's frantic heaves. The tube looms over him, its barrel streaked with carbon kiss, fins of spent shells scattered like metallic petals. Hale, the Kansas kid, methodically polishes a dud round, thumb tracing its grooves as if divining secrets. "She didn't miss much, did she?" Hale murmurs, voice cracked from shouts and smoke. Ramirez chuckles, dry as rust, rubbing circulation in numbing. "Miss? Hell, she danced. Felt like Paris in the spring, graceful, till it guts you." They share a canteen, the water tepid and tasting of canvas, toasting the absent Frenchmen whose whim warded them. Unseen, the irony settles, a sculptor's toy, born in absinthe haze, now the ridge's quiet redeemer. John Basilone, ever the bulwark, hauls sandbags to shore the breached wire, his 30 cal crew trailing like acolytes. His hands, blistered raw from the gun's embrace, flex experimentally, still whole, still hungry for the fray. A runner from HQ slaps his back. "Gunny, Brass wants your head on a platter, for breakfast with the Admiral." Basilone grins, wolfish, wiping gore from his brow. "Tell him I prefer mine on a pillow, and bring extra belts next time." He pauses at the pits, clapping Ramirez's shoulder. "Your tubes bought my ammo time, Eli. Owe you a slice of my mama's pie when we hit stateside." The exchange lingers, a thread of levity in the litany of loss. Men bound not by blood, but by the arc of a shell, the thud of a tube. Word radiates up the chain, a ripple from ridge to regimental CP. By noon, under a sun that mocks the night's chill, Cactus Air Force pilots buzz low in Wildcats, strafing stragglers slinking north. Pullers dispatched to division, perimeter intact. Mortar fire decisive, recommend resupply priority, HE rounds quining. Crackles over the net, earning a curt "Roger." Hold fast from General Vandegrift's Henderson bunker. The M2's baptism tallies in after-action logs. 9 tubes, 300 rounds, a kill ratio that defies the odds. Infantry's artillery, proving the patent's prophecy. No headlines yet, Guadalcanal's saga scrolls in blood, not bulletins. But in the armories back home, production lines hum hotter. Studebaker's forges birthing thousands more, the toy scaled to legion. Across the dateline, in a Paris atelier shrouded by occupation's gray, Edgar Brandt feels none of it. October 1942 finds him 63, bent but unbroken. His workshop a facade for the resistance's subtle sabotage. Rivets hollowed for explosives, grills hiding radio crystals. The Nazi swastika banners flap from his old deco gates, a perversion that twists his gut like bad solder. He sculpts by candle, power rationed to the Reich's whims, crafting a clandestine medal for a downed pilot. Eagle wings from scrap, inscribed Liberté dans la forme. Letters from America ceased with the fall of France. Rumors via BBC murmur of Pacific pyres, but his Tube 60 is a ghost in his own ledger. Royalties vaporized in Vichy vaults. Brandt pauses at his bench, fingers tracing a half-formed finial, curved like a shell's tail, unwitting echo. Does it serve or mock? The thought, unbidden, carries the weight of war's quiet betrayal. Beauty bent to breakage, simplicity to slaughter. He never sought the forge of fate. The general's laughter in 19 was absolution enough. Now in Blackout's hush, he etches parabolas into a lampshade, the light bending through like indirect fire. Jacques, his apprentice grown gray, brings smuggled news, allied whispers of island footholds, tubes that turn tides. Your design, patron, they say it whispers death in the dark. Brandt waves it off, eyes distant as the Seine's fog. Death, non, it murmurs survival, for those who hear. He returns to his work, hammer soft on the anvil, the ring a requiem for unknowns. The legacy unfurls in tendrils, unseen. Guadalcanal's stand, bolstered by the M2's malice, tips the slot scales. Japanese convoys mauled, reinforcements starved. By February 43, the island's theirs, a stepping stone to Tarawa's horrors, where the tubes will sing again. At Bedio's red beaches, lobbing defiance over coral walls, saving squads from the tide's teeth. Production surges. 500,000 rounds by war's end, the 60mm a staple from Sicily to Saipan. Manuals evolve, addendum on jungle bedding, refinements to the base plate's spike. No monument for Brandt, his name footnotes in ordnance tomes, a French flourish in Yankee steel. Post-war, the echoes persist. Thorne, gray at the Pentagon's edge, pens a memoir in 48, whispers from the forge, detailing the patent's passage, the Paris pitch that armed the arsenal. It sells modestly to VFW halls where vets nod over beers. That little bastard saved my bacon at Palaliu. Brandt, repatriated to peacetime's palette, sculpts anew. Fountains for the reconstructed boulevards, iron vines reclaiming the scars. He hears fragments, a GI's tale in a bistro, tubes lionized in newsreels, but claims no crown. Art answers questions, he tells a journalist in 50, his voice a rustle of newsprint. War asks them, I merely drew the line. Puller retires a lieutenant general, his chest a billboard of bronze stars, the M2 a silent chapter in his Nicaragua to Korea gospel. Basilone, hero of the Ridge, earns the Navy Cross there, then gives it back in ash at Iwo Jima's meat grinder, his guns silenced in 45. Ramirez and Hale, they fade to civilian cadence. Eli to a Brooklyn garage fixing Fords with finned flare, Jimmy to wheat fields, where the sky's arcs evoke old whistles. The ridge greens over, kunai swallowing the craters, but the geometry lingers, in declassified docks, in vets' reunions where thumbs trace phantom tubes. Brandt dies in 1960, quietly in his morass flat, surrounded by deco ghosts, a radiator cap like a knight's helm, gates that guarded nothing but grace. His obituary notes the sculptures, the salons, the weapon, a parenthesis in passing. Buried in Père Lachaise, near the quarry where his first shell fell, his stone reads simply, Form et function, no mention of the ridge, the 500 silenced, the thousands spared. Paris weeps rain on his plot, the Seine indifferent. Yet the idea endures, ironclad. The M2 evolves, Korean hills, Vietnamese patties, its DNA in modern mules, drones that drop with digital poise. Museums claim the relics, a tube in the Smithsonian's dim vault, pitted by Pacific salt, labeled dry, M2 60mm mortar. Designer Edgar Brandt, U.S. patent via France. Visitors, history buffs in chinos, school kids on field trips, pause fingering the bipod. A toy? One whispers. The guide smiles faint. Once, now, legends line. The moral settles like patina on steel. Never underestimate simplicity. It's the most complex form of genius. They laughed at art, and art answered with fire. True vision isn't measured in size but in impact. He built a toy. History built a legend. In the end, the smallest arc redraws the largest map. Edgar Brandt never saw the battle, but his idea fought and won. If you believe forgotten minds deserve remembrance, subscribe for more untold World War II brilliance.